Let's Science is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
3, 2, 1.
We live in a universe of scientific wonders.
Every day, scientists are inching towards breakthroughs which can change our lives.
We're playing our small part in sharing these wonders with you.
That's why today is a fine day for science.
So let's science.
All right, Caroline. Now this is exciting. I've been so just as Jesus has been desiring to share this Passover with us, I've been excited for you to talk about this story. We've had a couple of just one at the moment, a rocket launch in Australia, and it's going to pave the way for more rocket launches. So Caroline, tell us all about it.
Okay, yeah, this is very exciting for Australia and space science. So I've heard it. NASA launches rocket from Northern Territory, Australia. So this is the first commercial space launch in Australia's history and the first launch for NASA from a commercial spaceball outside the United States.
Yay!
Very exciting.
So cool.
A NASA rocket launch on Australian soil.
I was so excited by this. This is so
amazing,
cool. Yeah.
Amazing. So the launch of a Black Brant 9 suborbital sounding rocket took place just after midnight on June the 27th from Arnhem Space Centre in the Northern Territory. This space centre is located on Dupama Plateau, just outside the town of Nhulunbuy, and it's owned and operated by Equatorial Launch Australia. It's actually a newly constructed facility and it's located just 12 degrees from the equator, which means the launch vehicles actually get a bit of leverage into the Earth's rotation and gain extra velocity, which
bit of a kick.
Yeah, which it does, and it helps to cut costs a bit by improving the payload to fuel ratio of the craft. So the launch itself. Okay, so it had been delayed a little bit due to rain and wind, but eventually it managed to launch. And the launch was surrounded by a lot of excitement, as heard by the eventual countdown and the cheers during the launch. Now, did you guys watch the coverage of this?
I watched the last
the guy
couple
was like
of
10, 9, 8, and then at the end he's like 3, 2, 1, yeah! Like
so
he couldn't contain himself. Okay, it was great.
Awesome.
And then I saw an interview on the ABC News and excitement all around. Okay, it was really, really cool. So they had 75 personnel from NASA present, as well as other scientists, politicians, local community members, and Indigenous leaders. They all watched from about 800 meters away from the viewing platform.
And they did obtain permission to launch, so from the Indigenous elders of the land as well. Which is awesome. Yes, there's a big cooperation with everyone to make this happen.
Exactly. And so let's talk a little bit about the mission itself. So the suborbital rocket flew up to about 300 kilometers above the Earth, and the equipment went up. I mean, the rocket went up, and then the equipment itself then just came down because it did a bit of a sample and then came down, and it parachuted safely back to the ground about southwest of the launch site. It carried an X-ray quantum calorimeter, which will allow the scientists from the University of Michigan to measure interstellar X-rays and to understand the interstellar medium. Now, the interstellar medium is the material that fills the space between the stars. This is something we don't know too much about yet.
Oh, yeah.
And the influence on the structure and evolution of the galaxies and stars. This is the first of 3 launches. So there's 2 other launches that have been carried out between the 27th of June and then the final one will be on the 12th of July. The 2 other missions will be focusing on Alpha Centauri A and B, and which are 2 of the 3 Alpha Centauri systems that are closer to our sun. The missions will allow for information about how the star's light can influence planets' habitability. Now, the second mission that's going to be launched, I'm going to read this straight off NASA site, is the suborbital imaging spectrograph for transition region irradiance from nearby exoplanets, host stars, or Cystine. And this is from the University of Colorado Boulder.
Cystine. Love
yes,
it.
that's
I
the
love
short.
it. Yeah.
It's very good. I
So
love
good.
these.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's targeted for 4th of July, and it will study how ultraviolet light from the stars affects the atmospheres of planets around them, which is a pretty cool thing to study, and including the gases thought to be signs of life. The third mission is targeted for July 12th, and it's a dual channel extreme ultraviolet continuum experiment, or DUCE, from the University of Colorado Boulder as well.
Cool.
And it will measure so far unstudied part of the extreme ultraviolet light spectrum. These measurements are needed to model stars similar and smaller than our sun, as well as understand the effects on planetary atmospheres. So pretty cool. And just as a side note, why are they launching here? Because the studies can only be carried out in the southern hemisphere, because the targets can't actually be seen in the northern hemisphere by NASA.
The
And
Aussie
that's why
advantage.
they're doing them here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Love
yes.
it.
Yeah.
And as you were talking about the Indigenous people before, I have a little bit. I thought I should mention their participation as well. So the Arnhem Space Centre has been built on the lands of the Indigenous Yolngu people, and they are the traditional custodians and the landowners of this area. The great thing is that they were actually involved in helping to build the Arnhem Space Station on their land.
Brilliant.
Space Centre.
It's good.
Yep.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And so opportunities are actually being provided for them, and they're going to be taking part in future launches and projects and retrieving rocket modules when they return to Earth.
Yeah.
The Gumaj Corporation Chair, so Gumaj is, I've looked it up, and it's actually, the website shows that this corporation tries to build up businesses for the local people, so the local Indigenous people can take part in employment.
Excellent.
And helping to better their lives, and just have opportunities for them that perhaps they may not have otherwise. And they also have a community resources for people around the area, such as things like schooling, meals, laundry, and all of that. So it's the idea is that they can have a better quality of life, just like everybody else in the country. So the chairman, Pawa Yunupingu, said that the space industry can provide opportunities for the Yolngu people, he says. We want our young people to see and take up jobs and business opportunities that come from the growth of the Arnhem Space Centre over time. So I love this. It's a collaboration between, Indigenous people of our land. They have such a connection to the stars already and to the astronomy, and they get to take part in science with NASA. How awesome is that? That's such a wonderful, wonderful collaboration. So I thought that was a happy note to end it on there.
Yeah. We had Uncle Michael on our podcast.
Yes.
Was it? No, it was last year, wasn't it? Hang on.
Last year.
Yeah, it was last year. That's right. Yeah, and he was part of our discussion with him was about his understanding of Indigenous astronomy, and how they were doing astronomy well before it was developed as a science.
Exactly.
So relied on the stars and things. So yeah, there's that long connection. Caroline, there's another awesome mission that Rocket Lab. I love this one.
Oh.
Rocket Lab went to the moon. Wow, they're going to the moon in a sense.
That was what a launch that was.
It was so good. That one got me really excited. That for me is, apart from this Australian one, this is one of the big launches of. So there are some big things happening this year, hopefully. Anyway,
Yes.
So Artemis from NASA is hopefully launching. This is their big moon rocket. Will hopefully launch later this year in August, I think is the plan now.
Oh, I'm hanging out.
Yeah. SpaceX at some point will launch Starship. Could be any point now. They've got their final approvals, and now they're just doing their testing campaign, and it will go. So that's a big one. Obviously Australia, and there might be another Falcon Heavy. That's the Falcon 9, but with 3 boosters. That could be.
Oh gosh, yes.
But this one from Rocket Lab cannot be overlooked, because this is, in a way, paving the way to the moon too. I forgot what was it called, Capstone. I forgot what it was
Yes,
called
Capstone.
now. Capstone,
That's-
yeah, which
that's
is
the
an
one,
acronym
yeah.
for something, yeah. But this with this mission, it was launched from New Zealand. It was only a couple of days ago at time of recording.
we
By
watched
now,
it together, didn't we?
yeah, we were watching it, which is cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the time this podcast comes out, they would have already done their last engine burn from the Curie engine from the Photon
Yeah.
spacecraft that they have, and it's already on its way to the moon now by the time of recording.
What a little machine that thing is. It's
Yeah.
so good.
And that spacecraft and the equipment on it is the size of a microwave, basically.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
that, so they're going to,
It's tiny.
yeah, it's tiny as, yeah. So when it launched, it was set for a 6-day orbit of the Earth. And the orbit was getting wider and wider. And just before we started podcasting, I was looking at, is it Peter Beck? He's the CEO, I think, of Rocket Lab. I follow him on Twitter, and he was saying that it was currently about 60,000 something kilometers above the Earth, so that the orbit is widening and widening.
Awesome.
And now they're going to
How
do
exciting.
so cool, yeah. And so at time of recording, that it's going to get timey-wimey now, but at time of recording, tomorrow, which is Sunday, they're doing their final engine burn to send it on its what is it, trans-lunar injection? Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
Which is where it will be on its course towards the moon. Now, it's actually going to take a while, and it's not going to get into that orbit of the moon until November. So we might think of like the Saturn V mission, Apollo missions, we were 3 days to the moon. But this is a very different kind of mission. So by November, it will reach orbit. But the orbit won't be like a, standard orbit for Star Trek standard orbit, but it won't be like a normal orbit like what you would think of when you think of satellites orbiting. It's going to be in a something halo orbit. Anyway, it's kind of like think of it more like an elliptical orbit, so like an oval shape rather than a circle.
Oh,
if you want to put it that way,
circle around the planet just is like an oval.
Yeah. So what would happen is its closest pass by the moon will be about, I think, 1,000 or so miles, which translates to 1,500 to 2,000 kilometers. And then it goes on a really wide orbit, and then it kind of comes back again. And the reason why they're doing this is because they're testing the physics, because this is the point between the moon and Earth where the gravity of both should actually hold it in that orbit, holds objects in that orbit. Yeah. And the reason for that is like a pathway or a pathfinder for the Gateway space station, which is the space station that NASA, through the Artemis missions, will eventually put the modules for that into orbit. And that space station will then be used for people to dock with, astronauts, I should say, to dock with, and then from there to then go to the moon and then back again, land on the moon. So it's a very complex, a very cool operation, but this little I shouldn't even call it a little company in New Zealand. It's quite, it's getting quite big now in what it's doing.
Yeah, it is doing big things.
Yeah, but the work that they're doing is in cooperation with NASA. It's a NASA mission to to lay down ground for future moon landings, which is really cool. I love it.
Super cool.
Yeah, so we'll share more about that. And Caroline, I wanted to share a final science piece as well. Earlier in the year, I think it was when Lino and I were, it was a science segment I did with Lino, I think from memory, when Lino and I did an episode. We talked about a mysterious piece of space junk, an old booster rocket that was going to collide with the moon.
Yeah,
so
for the moon. Yeah.
Yeah. So that happened in March, March or May, as was discussed.
March 4th, I think they're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So it did happen. It did collide with the moon.
Yeah.
They still don't know who it belongs to.
No.
So it crashed into the moon and left two small craters.
Yeah.
It
And
left two craters.
It's got Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter.
Yeah.
Taking photos of the moon.
Of the crater,
Not going to be missed,
And they don't know who it belongs to. So the theories are, the leading theories is that...
No one's putting their hands up.
No one's saying it was me, The leading theories are that it could be a SpaceX booster, or it could be from a Chinese rocket.
It left a double crater as well, which is unusual.
Yeah, and so they're saying if it left a double crater, it was actually quite big, lending more credence to the theory that this is a Chinese rocket, but they don't know. So no one's owning up. Yep. No. But whoever you are, we will find out soon enough. We will know. Yeah. So you might as well put your hand up. It's like with children when they do something naughty, right? It's like, we're going to find out later, so you might as well tell us now.
No more rocket launches until somebody puts their hand up.
Yeah,
exactly.
We are putting you in timeout until we find out who it was. Yeah. So we will know.
Let's Science is brought to you by StarQuest Media and is a fortnightly podcast that brings you the scientific wonders of our universe from a distinctly Catholic point of view. For more from Caroline, Lindsay, and friends, listen to the StarQuest show, Catholics of Oz. Find links from today's show at sqpn.com/science and find the Catholics of Oz at sqpn.com/Oz. Be sure to follow the show in Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you can find podcasts, or on the SQPN YouTube channel. The generous donations of our patrons at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue Let's Science and all the shows at StarQuest, which makes our nonprofit mission possible. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. Join us next time for more scientific wonders, and thank you for listening to Let's Science on StarQuest.